You were going to go to another question in the rear?
My name is Ross Sandler. I'd like to look to the future a bit and ask both groups, what events or circumstances or milestones or trends would cause you to moderate your view?
I love that question. And it's what I asked before of Charles. What would be victory? When would you say, well, I might have been wrong, it's working out? Or the reverse, I might have been wrong, it's not working out. Jack Keane.
I'll start it off. One is the provincial election law itself, which is the most crucial in our view, because it's decentralized government and it's empowering people at local levels. And there's a lot of that there right now, but now it'll be formalized and it'll be a structure for them to vote for and a structure for them to receive budget money from as well. That's number one. Certainly, there's issues that surround the Kurds. There's Article 140. I don't want to get into the details of it because we don't have enough time. And that is of a concern, for us in the future. We're not, Fred and I are not suggesting that there are not challenges ahead in Iraq. Of course there are. But the good news that we are bringing to you is that there's been significant progress here, and we've moved into another phase. We're moving out of a security phase into a political phase where people are using the political process to address their grievances as opposed to armed violence, and that's what we have to be hopeful for. I don't think that could be turned back easily. And certainly the second thing that would concern me are the Iranians themselves. They are up to huge mischief here. This is of a significant strategic interest. Their number one strategic interest in Iraq is the removal of the United States. They want a weak central government in Iraq so that they can have influence over that government. And that is their strategic interest when it pertains to Iraq, not the region itself. Brigadier General Soleimani, who was the Quds Force commander, who engineered the operation in Iraq, in southern Iraq, on behalf of the Iranians. He is the Quds Force commander who defeated the Israelis in southern Lebanon. He has been in his position over 10 years. He is intelligent, experienced, and ruthless. He works for one person and one person only, and that's the supreme leader of Iran. Despite the major setback that we have had in the South for that leader and for his forces, his proxy forces, he is still in command, which tells me that they have not given up on their strategic objective. We believe, because of the anti-Iranian attitude that is in the South among its people, and their commitment to move to a greater Iraq, aligned with the United States, that we will be okay. But if you ask me, am I concerned about it? I am, because of their determination. Could it change things in Iraq? It could.
Sir Malcolm.
General Keane rightly says that the Iranians have a strategic objective of wanting to see a very weak Iraqi government in order that Iran will be the unrivaled power in the region. He conveniently forgets or ignores that Iraq did have a very strong central government, not just under Saddam Hussein, but for the last 50 years under successive Iraqi governments. It is because of the war that he is supporting that Iraq as a strong centralized state has been destroyed, and that Iraq today has exactly that weak decentralized government with a Kurdish autonomous region in the north, with the Shia and Sunni constantly battling for influence and power, and with the central government having little real power. That is exactly what the Iranians wanted to achieve, and it is American and British policy that has helped them achieve it.
Sir Malcolm, are you saying that the war makes victory impossible?
I am saying that the only way in which you can test whether victory has been achieved is not to simply look at whether the insurgency is going up or going down, as if the war is simply about the insurgency. The war is about the invasion of Iraq, the destruction of a regime, the creation of a political vacuum, and whether the overall effects of that strategy pursued by America, by Britain, and by the coalition, whether that has been a net plus for the Iraqis and for the region, or whether it has been a net minus.
Fred Kagan.
I'd like to take a minute to address one of the historical myths that seems to me to be embedded in this backward-looking definition of whether we're winning or not, which is how exactly was Iraq doing in the 1990s after the liberation of Kuwait, which was generally agreed to be a good war, led to an international sanctions regime, led to an oil-for-food program that became incredibly corrupt, not only on the Iraqi side, which was to be expected with Saddam Hussein, but also on the UN side, unfortunately, which created significant problems. And I've heard Iraqis explain to me, even now, some of the problems that are persistent in the corruption that you see in Iraq date back to structures and practices that were established under the oil-for-food program. Iraq was not exactly a wonderful buffer against Iran in the 1990s when we, the United States and Great Britain, were compelled to maintain forces which looked like forever in that circumstance, conducting overflight and periodically bombing Iraq. And there was no end in sight to that particularly either. Now, if you think that this war is going to drag on and be miserable for decades, obviously it was preferable to do what we were doing in the 90s than that. If you think that there's a prospect, as I do, of actual success, then this is something that can end in a way that that wasn't. But the notion that we were the ones who destroyed in 2003 a very effective system of dual containment, I think, is problematic. But I'd like to answer the question that was asked, because it's an excellent question. And I think as an analytical matter, it's something that's very important to put on the table, and I'm willing to put this on the table, and I'm willing to be judged against this, and you can throw this up to me 2 or 3 years hence, and we can talk about whether it worked out. What would make me change my mind about the analysis? To begin with, I already changed my mind. As I told you, I had been fairly pessimistic going into the passage of the provincial election law. I've changed my view as a result of that. If the provincial elections are not held, are not seen to be legitimate, or badly marred by violence, that will be a very negative indicator, and it will make me revise my view. If the subsequent Council of Representatives elections are not held, are not seen to be legitimate, or are badly marred by violence, that will be a very important negative indicator. If the Sunni Arab community in Iraq decides that it is not going to participate in the political process in these elections, in subsequent elections, or in any way thereafter, that will be an extremely negative indicator, and we'll have to revise our view. If the Iranian-backed and controlled special groups are able to reestablish themselves in a coherent fashion throughout the country and conduct the sort of coherent, widespread campaigns that they were able to conduct before the surge, that will be a negative indicator. If a Sunni Arab insurgency reforms coherently to conduct large-scale attacks, and I'm distinguishing that because I'm not claiming that Iraq will be a paradise. There will continue to be violence, there will continue to be intersectarian violence, there will continue to be ethnic violence, and there will continue to be terrorism. The question is there a coherent enemy organization on the Sunni or Shia side running it? If al-Qaeda actually returned and reestablished significant safe havens, I would say that that was an extremely negative indicator. And lastly, if large-scale, as distinct from periodic, as I say, smaller-scale violence and terrorism, if large-scale violence between Kurds and Arabs erupts, that will be a very negative indicator. Right now, I would say I'm most concerned about the elections, about the legitimacy, particularly of the COR elections, after we've drawn down even more forces. I think the reestablishment of Iranian-backed special groups is ongoing, and we will have to see how that plays out. The other indicators right now seem to me to be pretty positive, but I think those are the things that I would look at to evaluate as we move forward.
Thank you, Fred Kagan. And that concludes our Q&A section.